Well, welcome to the first episode, the first proper episode of Writing Advice with Enna. I'm Enna, your host. So if you have come from my main channel, this is a completely new format for me. I am not reacting to writing advice articles. I am not analyzing writing advice articles. I am giving you my advice based on my opinions and experiences and so forth and so on. So if you've seen the first video of this channel, I explain exactly what writing advice or what advice means so that we can be on the same page. And I would suggest that you watch that. I also give my opinions on writing advice perhaps being gatekept. You might want to check that out. So this video, this is going to be probably a series. I mean, definitely a series of question and answer. You asked, I answered. Writer to writer. This is part 1, general. I titled it general because this applies to any writer, not just a specific genre. Okay, so note that these are all my opinions and based on my experiences, and also my advice is also based on my experiences. I am a fantasy writer. I am a pantser, meaning that I write at the seat of my pants, or some people call it discovery writer. I have been a writer for over 15 years. Geez, that's a long time. Oh my gosh. And I hope I can help, even just a little bit. Unlike my main channel, these slides are made to be aesthetically pleasing for your eyes. So if you do happen to look up at the screen and see my wiggling little avatar, at least your eyes have something to look at, something nice to look at. And I thought I might write a script, but I don't know. I just feel weird reading off of a script, and I don't know. I tend to go on tangents, and I thought, it's best if you guys are seeing what I'm reading and stuff anyway, so I put everything on the screen. So if you happen to want to read along with me, you can, and if you're not even looking at the screen, then that's fine as well. But I hope you enjoy the aesthetics. I tried really hard to make these slides look very nice. So I'm still trying to figure out this whole entire format, but this has 6 questions. I don't know if that's going to be a lot or a little or what. We're just gonna see. So these are general questions like how you start writing, what helps. It's about motivation, about getting critiques, feeling bored, being original, and have you ever wanted to quit writing and how you dealt with that sort of thing. So if that sounds interesting to you, please watch on. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, there is a question, and then there is some text, and these are questions that I found in Facebook writing groups, reworded, of course, to be simpler or easier to understand, or I've seen a bunch of similar questions and just put them into one thing. And then I just typed up a little something, and I just pasted it on the slides. So I'm just going to read it and probably give additional thoughts and that sort of thing. That's probably how this is going to go. So the first question is, how do you start writing? What helps? For me, it's what I call the motivation mood. So I have to be in the right mood and right degree of motivation for writing, to start writing. Sometimes I just tell myself I have to write something today. Like, darn it, Anna, you have to write something today. Something today. And if I just really, really don't feel the motivation and like, oh my gosh, how do I even, I just write one sentence. And after I write one sentence, I think, I don't feel like I'm done yet. And so I write another sentence. And then I'm not done yet. So I write another sentence. And then I go on like that. I just go sentence by sentence and sort of checking in with myself, seeing how I'm doing and that sort of thing. And then at some point, I just go on a roll. And because I'm a pantser, I don't do any outlining or anything beforehand, so I just get right into it. And I try to make it a sort of, I try to make it an action in the first scene. Even if it's not going to turn out that way at the end when I edited it and everything like that. When I edit it, I don't know why I have trouble saying that word. I had trouble saying this the other day. Instead of saying edit it, I said edited it, even though I didn't mean it in the past tense. I don't know why it's so hard for me to say that. So I usually start with an action. The main character is doing something exciting. The reason I make it doing something exciting is because, well, I'm trying to motivate myself to continue writing the story, right? So I'm going to start with an action, like running through a forest. Why is he running through a forest? He is playing with his friends, and then suddenly his mother calls him to dinner, and then suddenly this happens and that happens. So there's lots of sudden things happening in the beginning, just so that I can keep my motivation going. And that's how I start writing. So I'm going to move on to the next text box. I don't know how these two texts are connected. Sometimes maybe you've planned for this day, but you feel so intimidated that you can't start. Yeah, sometimes I've seen people when they talk about how they start writing, like when other people give advice to people asking this question, like how do you start writing and what helps? There's some people say that they've planned for the day, but they feel intimidated, and then they can't start because they're worried that they might mess up, and maybe they're a planner and they've planned and planned and planned for months and months, and then what if they mess up, and then all this planning would have been for nothing? And so some advice that I have seen is that you need to remember that the first draft is going to suck. You can't avoid it. You just can't avoid it. The first draft is going to be filled with plot holes and inconsistencies. The writing is going to be blah sometimes. And sometimes you're going to use ly words, and you're going to make the characters smirk all over the place, or looking over their shoulder, or sitting down or standing up, or closing the door behind them, even though the door is, of course, behind them if they come into the room. So it's going to be a lot of that. You just can't avoid it. It's going to be like that. You cannot write the perfect first draft. I don't know if that even exists, to be honest with you. So one thing I would suggest, if you're a planner, and I'm not a planner, but one thing I would suggest sometimes that helps me, and I feel like would help other people too, is to start with one sentence or one bit of dialogue. I think dialogue might be very good because then you have to continue the conversation somehow, right? You're sort of forced to, in a sense, continue the conversation. So you're forced to continue writing. And then you just stop, and then you see how you feel. Do you still feel why am I not speaking today? Do you still feel a little intimidated? Or maybe you're not sure. So then you try another sentence and go on like that in tiny little bits. Just tiny little bits. You're not going to go into the story, start writing the story as telling yourself, I'm going to write a chapter, or I'm going to write 500 words. Just a sentence. And how many words is a sentence? What? Sometimes 30 words, sometimes less, 20 words, sometimes even 10 words. I don't know, 5 words. Just go on, start with just a little bit, just a tiny, tiny, teeny little goal, and just see what happens. And maybe that you are able to move past that sort of intimidation bump and sort of get into the flow of the story that way. Maybe. What do you think? You think that'll work? I think dialogue is really good, though. Action, too. Action, what I do is usually action. Dialogue doesn't always get me going, unless I have some kind of, I already have something in mind. Like, I already know the scene I'm going to start with, and then I decide to start with the dialogue instead of the action or something like that. But, action is a good one to start with, because then you're forced to sort of finish that action. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody is running, they're not just going to keep running for eternity, right? So you have to, make them stop running, make them stop running. And how are you going to do that? Like, what is happening in this scene that they will stop running? And so then you get to the stop running part, but then you say, oh, they stopped running. Why did they stop running? And so then you introduce the next thing. Maybe it's dialogue. And then, oh, when is this dialogue going to end? How am I going to end this dialogue? And then you come to the end of the dialogue. But then there's some action after the dialogue. The character is going someplace or doing something again, right? So it just keeps going on. And maybe that will help you continue on if you go sentence by sentence. Maybe. So that was how do you start writing and what helps. The next one is how do you move past negative critiques and keep writing? I have a feeling that maybe this question should have been later on, but anyway, we're rolling with this. So, negative critiques. Okay, so this, guys, this is really hard to do. When I received critique for the very, very first time, it was in a creative writing class, and it was me and like a whole bunch of other students, and it was my first real creative writing class, and where you would, write a story and bring it into class, and everyone else would have read it and give you some critiques. And oh my gosh, did they tear it apart completely. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what critique really is like. It was like, there were some suggestions like take the middle and put it on the beginning and take the end and put it in the middle. There's like reordering my entire story. And I'm like, instead of feeling defensive, I was more like shocked that this is the level of critique. But I mean, years later, that wasn't actually that bad. I was just receiving proper critique for the first time, and it just like blew me away. But that's good critique. Of course, the worst critic is yourself. I was always thinking, oh my gosh, my story is not original enough. But if you get negative critiques, like, the character is boring, and to you, as the person who wrote that character, you feel like that is a negative critique. And then you feel like, oh my gosh, my story isn't original enough. This story sucks. Can I even be a writer? Or whatever you think. And I think that one of the good ways to get past these negative critiques, that is to remember why you started writing in the first place. I think many authors begin writing stories because they enjoy creating stories. They like to tell them. They like to make up stuff and stories and all that. And I've heard a lot of stories of people who play Dungeons and Dragons, because that's creating stories. People who do Dungeons and Dragons turn into writers. using their D&D characters. That's kind of fascinating. And it's all that joy of creating these stories. It doesn't have to be even fantasy. I mean, I'm talking in terms of fantasy because I'm a fantasy writer, but some fiction stories about family connections or friendships or some romance stories or whatever. People feel joy when they create these stories, and it's that joy that keeps them going. So ask yourself, why did I start writing in the first place? What was that beginning? So, like, if you have been writing for some time, you have to remember, what was that beginning? Why did I first start writing? And if you're someone who's just started and you still have a long, long way to go, I think though you still have, even if you have a long way to go, you need to remember that even someone who's been writing for years, you might still have things to learn. So just because if you just started, you have all these things to learn, oh my gosh, all these critiques, everything, some of it is negative, some of it is positive. Especially the negative ones will really get to you because this writing, this story is your baby, and someone has just insulted your dear story. That's what you might feel. And you feel like you have so many things to learn still, and oh my gosh, can you even keep writing? Can you even do this? Are you even cut out for this? But even someone like me who's been writing for 15 years, I mean, I'm still learning things. You never stop. I don't think you ever stop learning. I think now I don't know, but I think that someone even like Stephen King or who are the other big writers that you guys like? Can only think of the ones that I like Sophie Kinsella or Aaron Hunter or Tamora Pierce. Who else? Khaled Hosseini. All those writers. Kristen Hanna. All those writers probably are still learning. They are learning. They're still learning. And they're always trying to improve their writing somehow. So as you keep on writing, like if you've just started and you keep on writing, you become a stronger writer every day. And you will get there to wherever there is, whatever goal that you have, eventually, if you keep writing. But sometimes we get these negative critiques, and they can knock down our egos and our confidence. And negative critiques are pretty horrible to get. They might even annoy us to the core. They might even get our blood boiling. I got this critique once for my debut novel, Between Roses. I once got this critique on this scene. So there's a scene where the main character, Erin, she has stumbled into this crazy fantasy world. And she has this one thought. And this one thought is, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I'm not on my period. And somebody said, and somebody who claimed to be an editor on Wattpad said, and now don't judge Wattpad. Wattpad can be a very nice place. She said, in all caps, don't ever mention her period. And I thought, What is your problem, lady? I mean, I did think that. I didn't say it. I didn't say it. You don't say those things. You just think it. And I was like, well, what is she going to think about? I mean, if I stumbled into a fantasy world, that's going to be on my mind because I'm a woman and I'm going to be worried about that. I don't know what guys worry about. But of course she's going to worry about that. Why wouldn't she worry about that? And that's a weird thing to critique on. So I took that as a negative critique, and it's in all caps. Like, what it was her problem? It didn't seem like her keyboard was stuck in all caps either. Otherwise, what, she would have mentioned it, wouldn't she? Anyway, so you get those critiques, right? And you know what is worse than a negative critique? Losing all your data if your computer breaks down. But that hasn't happened to me. It has happened to some people, and those are pretty, those are horror stories. Compared to losing your data, negative critiques are just words. And the person on the other side of the screen is someone maybe you don't know. Or if it's someone like the creative writing class I told you about, you know, they're still just words. And also, you have to think that these people, most people are coming from a good place. But some people aren't coming from a good place. And when you initially receive these sort of critiques, and it's hard for you to differentiate between actual constructive criticism and just being mean, and just being stupid mean. I would suggest that once you get a negative critique, like if you've posted something on Facebook or some other writing forum and someone said something that you feel immediately defensive about, leave it. Don't even reply. Just leave it. Take a deep breath. Maybe even go away. Maybe not even look at it until the next day. And then come back to it with a fresh mind after you've cooled off and see if you can actually apply it to your writing. See if they're actually making a good point. And this is very hard to do in the beginning when you first receive these kinds of things. I get it. It's hard, and that's okay that it's hard. It's hard for writers to look at their own writing in a subjective way. Subjective way? Objective way. Yes, objective way. It's hard for writers to look at, it's hard for anyone to look at their own creative work in an objective way. A lot of things are subjective. So you're looking at it through your own bias, or so to speak. So you have to really look at this critique. Like if they said, don't ever mention her period. And I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? So then I come back after I've cooled off and everything. And then I look at it and I think, is objectively speaking, like if I were reading my writing for the first time, as a first-time reader, and I saw this sentence, and I saw this critique, would I say this critique is, like, valid? Would I say that this is something that I could actually apply? Is it, like, what do you say, warranted? It's not warranted. What word am I trying to think of? You know, like, if it's right, or if it's something that you can apply, is it actually helpful? And then I see that, you know what? If I was a reader and reading this and I thought, and I saw, the character's just mentioning her period, I personally, like if I saw that in another book, maybe this is a way to think about it. This is a way to look at your writing objectively. If you've never done this before, or if you don't know how to do it. Think of the books that you've read. And imagine, like, if you saw the same paragraph or the same part that's being critiqued on in one of the books that you've read, and then you saw one of these critiques, like, would you think that, oh yeah, I mean, maybe my character is kind of boring, he doesn't really do much, he doesn't really, things are just happening to him, he's kind of passive. I can see how that character would be boring. And then you might be able to, if you can see it in somebody else's writing, then maybe you can fix it more easily. Maybe. Am I making sense? But then if you see some weird critique like character should never mention her period ever again, and you see that in another book, like a character is mentioning her period and she's a high school girl, and of course when you're in high school you would probably have your period, then you see a critique like never mention her period, or like, what does that have to do with anything? It has nothing to do with the plot. Because if it had something to do with the plot, like if it really had something to do, like her mentioning or not mentioning her period has something to do with the plot, then maybe yes, it's a valid critique. But if the plot is about this main character stumbling into a fantasy world and trying to save the world from the beast of pure madness, maybe critiquing on her talking about her period is kind of ridiculous. So then you can say, well, I will ignore this critique. So let me just mention one thing at the end here. Moving past negative critiques is, negative is also subjective. You're seeing it as negative because you're feeling a little bit defensive. So I would suggest leaving and then coming back to it. Even leaving it for a day, not even looking at it until the next day, after you've cooled down a little bit. Because initially you're going to be all, oh my gosh, this is so negative. You come back to it. And then the second thing is to, if you've never looked at your work objectively before, like you don't know how to do that, think about or imagine this certain paragraph or this certain character or whatever you got your critique on in some book that you've already read. What if you found it in there? In some book, some imaginary book. Like think of maybe, okay, what if I saw this in a book? Like somebody else wrote it. Would I think this critique is necessary or ridiculous? And then the third thing would be for negative critiques to move past them. They are just words. And you take words with a grain of salt or a pinch of salt. I've seen people say pinch of salt, but I think a grain is enough. So that's how I would move past negative critiques and keep writing. And if you keep writing and keep writing, you will become a stronger writer every day. But you will not stop learning. You will continue on learning. Was that a good answer? Did I speak in a straight line? I tend to go off onto tangents. I did try really hard to keep my mind on my head on straight, and give you a straight answer. Okay, I'm going to have a sip of water. Please keep dehydrated. Dehydrated? No, don't keep dehydrated. That was a mistake, sorry. Keep hydrated. Keep hydrated. Don't keep dehydrated. Okay, so I need to click the screen because it's unresponsive. Okay, so the next question is, my story feels boring. I don't know what I'm doing. Should I just give up on writing the story or in this genre? I saw this question on Facebook, and somebody replied saying that if you think a story is boring, why are you writing it? Why are you a writer? Maybe you should just stop being a writer. And that was a stupid answer. And apparently the admins also thought it was a stupid answer because I saw the comment had been deleted some hours later. So, this is not a stupid question either, okay? There are no stupid questions, okay? A story, as you're writing it, it can get boring. And there's a few reasons for that. Maybe you're writing the middle, the dreaded middle, where the story usually sort of slows down a little bit until it builds up towards the climax. Or maybe the story just isn't the wow, exciting awesomeness that you envisioned. You had such high expectations that once you started writing, it's just so boring and you don't know why. You started out imagining some epic, awesome, fantastical thing. And I don't just mean fantasy. And you've somehow ended up with a sandwich that's just bread. How boring. Ugh, how boring. Imagine a sandwich that's just bread. That's not even a sandwich anymore. But maybe you need to figure out where it started to get boring, because there was some point where it started to get boring. You need to go back through your draft, go back in time. Where is it that the story starts to feel boring? And maybe you can try some of my favorite remedies for that. I have two of my favorite remedies when I feel the story has started to get boring. So, first one I call destruction and rewrite. Yeah, okay. So, once I've identified the boring onset, you really have to go back through your story. Once you've identified the boring onset, you select it all of it, to the point where you've written up to. You cut it. And I'm not saying to kill your darlings. Hold on your horses. You cut it and you're going to paste it in a separate document. You're going to title that document deleted scenes or whatever you want to call it. And you save it. Okay? You're saving the document. And then you're putting that document in a place where you can't look at it. Maybe you click the X and you just you're not going to look at it at all. Or you click the minus button and you're going to put it down below somewhere. And then you go back to your new blank spot. You look where you left off and start again. And so you're not going to look at the old version at all. Okay? So, some people say kill your darlings, right? That is to just delete something that you feel like, oh, I really like this part. I really, really like it. I want to keep it, but it's not doing anything to the plot, so I have to delete it, and that's kill your darlings. But what I'm saying is that you don't have to kill your darlings. You can keep them. You can keep them for as long as you want. That's up to you. That's why I said to cut and paste in a separate document. Not that you might not ever look at those deleted scenes ever again. But you might. And keeping this blah part, that is to satisfy that need to want to keep your darlings. And some people are so worried or apprehensive or whatever about this, about killing their darlings. I've seen people like some YouTubers, like writer tubers, giving advice about killing your darlings or not, or whatever, and people being in the comments like, I never want to kill my darlings ever, like, why can't I just keep it? But sometimes getting rid of it was the best decision you ever made. Sometimes it wasn't, and you don't know that. You don't know what's going to happen, so I suggest that you keep it. And it also makes you feel nice that it's there, that it exists somewhere, and you can always go back and get it if you feel like it. But this is to help you get over that boring part that you've come across, and you're just going to destroy and rewrite. Okay? I don't do this very often, to tell you the truth, but sometimes I do. Sometimes it just needs to happen. Sometimes what I wrote is just sucks so bad that I can't even come back from it. Um, as a pantser, you might think if you're not a pantser that this destruction might happen a lot, but it actually doesn't as much for me because I use my second remedy a lot instead. The second remedy is called the curveball. I like to call it the curveball. So, once you've identified the boring onset, give yourself a big, long enter, space. So you're putting a lot of space between the onset and the place where you don't feel like it's boring yet. And you're going to push it all the way down until it's barely visible at the bottom of the page so that you can see it. And then now you go back to the onset and you throw yourself a curveball. The reason I push it all the way down instead of doing the destruct and rewrite is that because sometimes I just want to, keep it there. I just want something to connect this exciting part to this next boring part, and I feel like I can throw myself a curveball and then I can do the rewrite right then and there. Does that make sense? I'm doing hand gestures, but you can't see me. I have a picture of a crossroads here, two streets in a forest going two different directions. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. So one side goes to the boring side and the other side is the curveball. So how you do a curveball is that the thing with curveballs, you want them to be an action. So I talked about when you start writing the story, it might be good for it to be dialogue or action. That's sort of like what you want, some exciting thing. What you want the curveball to be is some exciting thing. So, for example, I'm going to give you examples. Don't worry. For example, main character sits down to read a book and her friend joins her. It's nice, very nice, little calm, little scene, but it's kind of boring. It's getting kind of boring. So, enter, space. Curveball. The lights go out, and they both begin to panic. One goes to check the fuse box and does not return for a long time. The other goes to check when. And depending on your genre, you can take it to horror. You can take it to romance. You can take it to fantasy. Anything works. If it's not the lights go out, if they don't have electricity, the candle blows out, or it suddenly gets dark somehow, or a gust of wind hits the window and the rain starts gushing outside and everyone gets shocked, and then the wind blows the candle out. Something sudden like that, something that will change the character's actions, make them do something else other than sitting on a bed and reading or whatever. Another example. Oh, you're walking along a path through a forest to reach the next town. Oh, that's very nice. Curveball. Enter, space, curveball. A beast jumps out and attacks. Never seen before, this beast. Fight. It leaves behind some unique item that glows on its own. The main character touches it, and then... Now, this is very fantasy. This is a very fantasy scenario, because I'm a fantasy writer. I can't help it. You could do something else. A beast jumps out and attacks. The love interest saves the main character, and suddenly he sees her or she sees him for the first time. It's like a more potential love interest. Or there is a ditch. Someone falls down into a hole. Just something sudden. It starts raining. Weather is a good thing to use, really. Starts raining. It starts snowing. It gets really cold, or there's actually a split path. You need to choose which way to go. You're not sure which way to go. The map doesn't say anything. What are you gonna do? You have to decide. And then it starts raining. Really, rain is very good to use. Rain is really, really good to get your characters to do all kinds of things. Now, the trick with curveballs is to not think too hard. I think people who are planners might also be able to use this curveball method. I'm not sure how flexible outlines for planners are, but as a pantser, when I use curveballs, I don't think too hard. I don't even consider the potential plot holes that this could bring on. I'm just trying to get myself out of boredom here. I am not thinking about anything else. Okay, so that's what I do to get rid of this boredom. And I don't think just because you're bored with writing doesn't mean you should give up or in this genre. If you really, you really have to remember here, like, why did I start writing in the first place? It's because I enjoy creating stories. Then wouldn't you give it a little bit more of a chance? Just a little bit more of a chance. Throw yourself a curveball, see how that does. And if it really doesn't seem like it's something that you like, then you're not giving up. You're not giving up on writing, putting it to the side. Do some other creative project. Maybe you'll come back to it in the future. You don't have to give up on writing. You can, set it to the side. Just because writing isn't for you now, maybe it might be for you later. Who knows? And also, genre. If you started writing like fantasy, why did you start writing fantasy? Why do you want to write fantasy? What is so intriguing about fantasy to you? You remember that. Recall your reasonings for doing this, starting in this genre, and give it another chance. Try my remedies if you like. Destruction and rewrite if you want to be brutal with yourself, or the curveball method. I really like this curveball method. It's helped me so many times, let me tell you. And also makes the story pretty exciting. Things happen in the story that I never planned to happen, and then it makes it even more interesting. That's what's happened with me. Anyway, we're moving on. So we talked about how to start writing the story. We talked about some negative critiques. And we talked about boredom. Now we're talking about motivation. So, sometimes motivation is hard, not just starting to write the story, but how do you keep motivated? How do you keep motivation and inspiration going? That's the question. How do you keep motivation and inspiration going? Sometimes it's hard and sometimes I don't. Honestly, 15 years of writing, sometimes I just don't. Sometimes I'm on YouTube for hours watching Ryucar do a 100 Mario challenge, or listening to Amanda from Swell Entertainment talk about an interesting convention she went to. Motivation and inspiration depend, for me, on the project. So if I'm editing only, like I was with my debut novel Between Roses, I just have to do it. I set myself a deadline, and so I just have to do it. So I open the document and then I go through the first paragraph, just the first paragraph. I'm just going to edit this first paragraph. And before I know it, I'm going on to the next paragraph and the next paragraph, because personally, I don't want to have a partially edited chapter. It bothers me. It just bothers me. So I use that side of myself that I know this is going to bother me. Like if I start working on this first paragraph and finish it, I'm going to want to work on the next paragraph and finish it. And the next one, because I need to finish this chapter. I know maybe I want to go finish at an even number chapter instead of ending at chapter 8. Maybe I want to end at chapter 10 because it bothers me. So use your sort of, I don't know, is it a negative side of myself? I don't think it's a negative side, but it's a characteristic. Use a characteristic of yourself that maybe is not always a good thing, like your stubbornness or weird things bothering you. Use it to your advantage. I don't know how you would, because I don't know what your characteristics are and stuff like that, but that's something that works for me. As for inspiration, like if I'm drafting a new story, and I've recently begun to really contemplate writing a new story. It's going to be very exciting. I can't wait to start. If I'm writing a news story, and this is where actually curveballs can come in. If I'm writing a news story and I'm continuing, I'm in the news story, I'm just continuing writing. This is where I use the curveball method. I throw myself a curveball while I'm writing. If I feel like, ugh, because after so many years of writing, I've been able to tell when the boring onset is coming. It usually comes when characters sit down, when the characters don't move, when they're getting into some serious conversation. Then if it's getting into a serious conversation, I try to bring up something, something about the past, or something shocking, or something deep, or something philosophical. I don't know what. Or I just say, forget it. We don't have time to be philosophical. A monster is coming to attack. Okay, characters, what you gonna do about it? So sometimes I just throw myself a curveball, and it's during editing when I might actually go back and flesh out those serious scenes if I wanted to. Other things that work for me for inspiration if I'm drafting a news story is like making mood boards or watching documentaries that inspire the setting. Or I go look through Pinterest a lot, and I collect inspiration pics for the setting and the characters. So let me show you what that kind of looks like. This is part of my, if you're looking at the screen right now, you definitely should. This is part of my Pinterest board for Between Roses. Usually I have a bunch of pins, a bunch of pictures that inspire characters. It reminds me of the character, or it's a place, or it's a vibe. Places like the Old Toader, characters like the Jibberjabby or Clue, places like Underland and Upperland, and some of those pictures are vibes as well. Like the characters in those pictures don't actually appear, but I imagine that in this world, these types of characters can be found. So about Pinterest. Oh yes, I also wanted to mention these. This is also from my Pinterest board. Just vibes. A sign that says that way, this way, wrong way, go back, tea party. A sign that says, are you lost? Some teacups on top of each other. Some fancy dagger. Stuff like that. Just vibes. I just collect them all in one place, because once you have it all in one place and you look at it, it says, oh, this is the vibe of this story, and it looks all very nice together. I don't know, that motivates me. And now the thing about Pinterest is that if you've never, like, you don't know, when searching for inspiration on Pinterest and you don't know where to start, I would start with aesthetic. So like Wonderland aesthetic, and I actually typed in and screenshotted this, so you look at it and you see I typed in Wonderland aesthetic, and what came out is all these things with Wonderland vibes. A girl sitting at a table where these playing cards and teacups and cookies, some Alice in Wonderlandish collages and artwork, a girl touching a mirror, that sort of thing. Try fantasy aesthetic or vintage aesthetic. You can try anything. Just put anything aesthetic. It works. Era, genre, movies, types of characters like what, Sunshine Grumpy. I think there's probably an aesthetic for that. I mean, there's aesthetics for everything on Pinterest. Just type in something and then put aesthetic, and something will come up, definitely. I tried romance aesthetic, and this is what I got. Some sort of romancy, like pictures and stuff, I guess. A couple sitting at a library reading books together. I don't know. I also tried sci-fi aesthetic, and I got this. So yeah, genre aesthetic works well. But another good one is photography. You're likely to get real people instead of AI. Likely. I can't completely say yes, but likely to get real people if you say fantasy, like if you say fantasy photography or nature photography, or maybe you type photography, model, woman, long hair, I don't know, whatever you're looking at. Photography, male, suit, dark fantasy, or something like that. Like you try with photography, you tend to get a lot of really nice, good, beautiful, inspirational photos. So, that is a tutorial how to use Pinterest as a writer, I guess. Now, one weird thing that helps me get motivated when drafting a story is watching a video of someone working on a project. And then I get this writing urge. So I just stop the video. I don't even finish watching the video. I just stop it and then I go write. And sometimes it's because I think, hey, wait, you writer, I can write too. I bet I can finish my project before you. Yeah. I bet mine is more interesting too. Now, I don't actually say this to the people, and I don't actually sincerely think this. But I sort of get kind of competitive, I guess. And that gets me motivated. So these are some people that I go to. This person, Anna New, I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's a young writer. Sometimes her videos, sometimes Abby Emmons, sometimes this new guy that I discovered, Jed Hearn. These people, sometimes I go to recently. So yeah, that keeps me motivated. Do you ever do that? Do you look at other writers doing writing sessions or whatever, and then instead of continuing watching the video, just stop the video and just go write? Or do you keep the video on? I can't keep videos on when I'm writing. I can't concentrate, so I have to turn it off. But anyway, we're moving on to the next, and I'm going to have a sip of coffee. Okay. So, the next question is, how can you be original? How do you find your niche? These two are, these are all similar questions, as if there's a lot of questions, but there's not a lot of questions, only 2 questions. So let's tackle the first one. Let's hold on a moment. We're going from motivation to thinking about how we can be original. Okay. So, how can you be original? So, the journey to finding my originality when it comes to writing. This is something that I have severely struggled with before. So, this was probably about, I want to say, 5 years into officially calling myself a writer. I'm going to write stories, and it's going to be my thing. I was struggling with what is originality. How do I find my originality? Where do I go to get that? I mean, I feel like whatever I'm writing is just something that somebody else has definitely thought of before. How am I going to find anything? So I spent months agonizing over this. And I was just thinking, what makes original? Why? How do you become original? And then one day, it came to me. It was an epiphany. So let me tell you a secret. You have to come close. Very close. Wait, oh my gosh, that is too close. Okay, not that close. So, did you like the fox? I like the fox. Anyway. Okay, so the secret is you are original and unique. Okay? You wrote a story about a magical boy going to a magical school. This is not JKR writing it or anyone else. It is you using your perspectives, your knowledge, your experience, and your personal imagination. That is all original and unique, which makes your story original and unique. I am going to preach this until the day I die. So many people are so worried about originality, and I get that because I was worried about it for many months. I guess I could say I was worried about it for years. I was. You are original. You are an original person. You are unique. Your perspectives and your knowledge and experience, everything about you is unique, and that is original. And based on that, you are writing. So that makes your writing original. Just because you wrote about a human girl meeting a vampire guy at a school and them falling in love doesn't mean you're writing the exact same story as Stephenie Meyer. That does not mean you are writing Twilight. You are not writing Twilight. You are writing your vampire story with your human girl, with using your imagination, your experience, your knowledge, and your perspectives. Okay? So it is still original and unique. Remember that. I'm going to probably mention it a lot on this channel. So, how do you find your niche then? How do you find your niche? I think niche really comes with time. Time spent learning the craft, reading the books that interest you, watching the movies that interest you, and even doing art or looking at art can all connect to writing inspiration. And little by little, as you experiment with different styles and different genres and hone your craft, you'll figure out what you gravitate towards when it comes to creating setting, characters, and plot. For me, I was always like, any story that I started writing has some kind of fantasy element in it. I can't keep away from fantasy. You cannot keep me away from fantasy. But what fantasy do I write? I kind of write all kinds of fantasy, actually. But some people, they know their niche to an extent already, like from the start. Like, they know what their niche is. Like, maybe there is a writer who likes to write sci-fi with romance taking place on a spaceship drifting across the stars, and that is what they like to write about. That is their niche, that they really like focus on that, and that's what they write. Like, that's all they write. So some people already know. So, but that doesn't mean that you have to also already know. I didn't know. I mean, I've experimented with all kinds of things. I mean, I've tried writing just non-fantasy. I can't seem to. There's always some element of fantasy in my stories. If you know you want to do fantasy, I'm sort of, general fantasy, I guess. I generally write fantasy. I can't say exactly what particular subgenre of fantasy, but you might want to find out what kind of fantasy you write and what will be your signature element. And when I say signature element, I mean, like, in my stories, there's often a poem. I started writing poetry before I started writing novels. So I like to put some poetry in my stories, whether that be because the character sang a song, sang a lullaby, or actually recite a poem. My debut novel, Between Roses, is going to have a bunch of poems that were very fun to write in the style of Lewis Carroll. You gotta check it out. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Anyway, usually my stories have some kind of poem in it. Usually some kind of walk through the forest. And usually characters are at some peril in the middle of the story. I don't know. Maybe they're not. Actually they are. I sort of how do you say it? Put my characters down to the lowest of lows and then bring them right back up at the climax. Try to, anyway. There's usually some forest in my stories. Some kind of forest in my stories. Some kind of forest, some kind of poetry, and what else do I have? I wouldn't say there is, well, elemental magic. Often elemental magic, but not a lot. There's also a bit of like silly humor in my stories. Silly humor. Like bunny slippers that move and wiggle and have a mind of their own. Just silly little things. Wacky, silly little things. So, not that you will try to figure out like, okay, I am going to make this my signature element, so every story that I write is going to have this, and not that you would actually decide what that is beforehand, but as you're writing, you would figure that out. You would figure out that, hey, I like to put this in my story, so maybe I'll actively put it into the rest of my stories, or something like that. So, and that could be your niche. Like niche doesn't, I don't think niche, does niche always, niche, I don't think niche always has to be like genre specific. Like if you say, okay, I write spaceships with aliens and humans becoming best friends on a spaceship, and there's always going to be a black hole. You don't have to be that sort of specific. I think you can say that my niche is putting poetry into my stories. Something like that. I don't know. I think maybe that could be the niche. And how you find it is just writing a bunch. Just write a bunch and don't think about niche. It's good to not in the beginning not think about niche, especially if you've only written like a few stories. You won't know what and you don't really like have a style yet or have a niche, because I think niche is kind of related or connected to style. So you would just write and do all kinds of writing and lots of writing. Just experiment and have fun. Remember to have fun. This is something that you started because you enjoy it. You have to remember why you started it. And just write and fun. And yeah, and then eventually at some point when you go back through all the stories that you've written, you'll notice there is some common element. There is some kind of common element in your stories, and then you can find that common element and you can apply it to the stories moving forward, and that could be your niche. That's what I do. I mean, I didn't in the beginning think, okay, I'm going to put poetry in all my stories. I didn't think that. It just kind of happened naturally, and then I just kept doing it, and then I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to do it in all my stories. Or almost all of my stories. That's going to be like my signature style. Like if someone says, okay, what is an Anna L. Foxwood book? It has a poem in it. There is a forest in it. Things like that. You know, like if someone can list it up, you know, something like that. Like if we think of Stephanie Meyer, we think of vampires, right? Or I don't know. Do we always think of vampires? Humans turning into things. Because she also wrote The Host, and the human turned into something. So a human turning into something that is not human, maybe that is her niche. What do you think? Let me know what you think about finding niche. But I do think that it comes, I think, at least for me, it came after I've written a bunch of books. Then I looked back at those books and thought, you know what? I always do that. maybe moving forward, I'll always do that so that people know that, okay, this is an Anna L. Foxwood book. So, yeah. Anyway, this is the next question. I think this is the last question. I'm not sure. This might be the last question. Have you ever wanted to quit writing? How did you fight it? Or did you just give up? This was a question I saw on Facebook in a writing group, and I thought, wait, hold on a moment. My brain does not comprehend, because I have never, not once in my life, ever thought of, quote, quitting writing. Never once entered my mind. If someone ever told me to stop, it would just make me write even harder. So for me, it's never been an issue. My brain does not comprehend. Okay, so now that being said, if you watching this, listen to this, or whatever you're doing, maybe you're washing dishes or folding laundry or putting your things away. I don't know. That being said, if you're feeling some type of self-doubt, or you're tired of things not working your way, or something else is making you feel like quitting and giving up, maybe you need to take a step back. Maybe you need a break from writing and from talking about writing. So it's okay. It's completely fine to take months, even years away from writing if you feel like you don't want to do it anymore. That doesn't mean that you're giving it up. You don't give up writing. You put it to the side. You're going to just put it to the side, just for now, and go on other creative writing, go on other creative endeavors. Maybe take up those piano lessons you've always wanted to do, or start crocheting, or do watercolor, or maybe sculpting, or maybe you never get back to writing, but it'll always be there waiting for you. Because when I think about giving up, it's just a sad thing. I feel like I'm just gonna give up. It's like almost like you're putting yourself down. It's like you feel like saying give up. It's like, I give up. It's like, okay, I am not good enough for this, or I have failed this, so I'm going to give up. It just sounds like a sad thing to say give up. You're not giving it up. You're putting it to the side. I think it's good to rephrase it that way. It's a little more positive, I feel like. I've heard of some writers who did writing when they were teens, and then they didn't pick it up again until they entered their 30s, 40s, 50s, but they never just gave up. As I said, they just put it aside for the time being. And I'm repeating myself, I believe that writing is always there for you if you want to go back to it. It's always going to be there. And I think that's reassuring. It's not there sort of pressuring you to write it. It's just going to be sitting there, just going to wait. And it's fine if you never go back to it. It's fine. That's fine. You just do what you want to do. And if you do feel like taking it back up again, great. If you don't, also great. Also great. Me, other writers, we're not trying to force writers to not give up. I don't think. That would be kind of mean, I think. And if you want to fight it, like you have writer's block or whatever, it's just things just aren't working. Oh my gosh. Just take a break. Maybe you need it. I once took a break from writing for like 6 months or something. This was way back when I first started writing. I wasn't particularly serious about writing. It was just like a hobby at that point when I first started. I was like 16, 17. So, that was 15 years ago. So now you know how old I am. So I took a break from writing. I didn't really like take a break. I just wasn't writing. I just wasn't feeling it. I don't know what I was doing. Honestly, I don't know what I was doing, but I might also have been studying for entrance exams or something, probably. But anyway, I wasn't doing any writing. But yeah, I think it's always there for you. It's always there for you if you want it to be, and if you don't want it to be, that's fine. It's just going to sit there. Just going to sit. Sit and look pretty. Like a cat on a shelf. Okay. So, that is the end. That is actually the end. Okay. So, I talked about how to start writing. I talked about negative critiques and motivation and keeping your inspiration and motivation. I talked about how you can use Pinterest. That was an unexpected tutorial, how to use Pinterest as a writer. Talked about originality. You are original and unique, okay? Remember that. That makes your stories original and unique, okay? So, that is that. What else did I talk about? Talked about quitting writing or not and stuff like that, and inspirations and everything and aesthetics and all that good stuff. Okay, so that is it. If you have anything you want to mention, maybe you want to add something to some of these questions, feel free to comment them down below. I might put the list of questions into the description so that you have them there, or into a pinned comment or something like that. Either way, you'll be able to find them easily without having to go back in the video, because who wants to do that, right? So, that's it for this video. These are all my opinions, my advice based on my opinions and my experiences. Not saying that you have to or you should do these things, definitely. Also not saying these will definitely work for you. You can try them and see if they will. In the end, discuss nicely. Subscribe if you like this type of stuff. More writing advice is coming your way. Going to be a little more there's another set of questions which is more about fantasy and world building and that sort of fantasy writing and world building and that sort of stuff. So stay tuned for that. What else is going to be on this channel? I'm going to be very specific, like advice for like show don't tell, advice for like an omniscient viewpoint, advice for like specifically starting the first chapter, advice for editing, maybe all kinds of things, all kinds of aspects of writing, all this writing advice stuff. Maybe my own writing advice on the process of how to start writing a story. My tips, hopefully better than all those writing advice articles that I've analyzed on my main channel. So anyway, if you want to hear more stuff from me, like, subscribe, share this video to your friends who you think might need to hear this stuff. What else do you say at the end? Hope you have a lovely day. Remember, you are original. You are wonderful. You are learning every day. If you want to continue on this journey, great. If you don't, also great. If you're curious, also great. If you have opinions, great. Discuss nicely. And yep, that's it. Have a lovely day. Did I already say that? I already said that. All right, goodbye. I'm Just a Fox. See ya later. See you later. See you later. See you later. That's it. And the fox is out.